It had been so long since we had gotten an MCU film. And on July 9th, we finally got Black Widow, the 24th MCU film. So today I'll be ranking all 24 MCU films from the worst to the best. Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. My name is Gabriel and I love to rank movies. If you can relate, consider hitting that subscribe button. And please know that this list is just my opinion, but I would love to see yours down in the comment section. But with that said, let's get started. Coming in last place is Doctor Strange. Even from the first viewing, I didn't really like this film. It just never really interested me, and even as a little tot, I didn't really like the character of Doctor Strange. I liked his character in Infinity War, and I'm hoping I like him in No Way Home and his second movie coming soon. But in this, he was just kind of annoying. He has some good comedy with Wong, but the rest was just too weird. All of it has amazing visuals, and that is easily the best thing about it. But like I said, it's just too weird. There's this scene where there are hands growing on Doctor Strange's fingers, and then on the fingers of the new hands, there are more hands growing, and so on. That seems like something that belongs in a Tim Burton film. Like most people think, the villain is incredibly forgettable and bland, and I just don't really think this is a good movie. I probably should rewatch it because I haven't seen it in a while. I'm dreading doing that, but Doctor Strange is coming in last place. Number 23 is Thor. Thankfully, this is the last movie I have to talk about negatively. The others are either okay, good, or great. I definitely have problems with the rest, but this is the last one that's bad. This is probably the most ugly-looking MCU film. I really do not like the color palette, and especially Thor's yellow eyebrows. For some reason, they bleached Chris Hemsworth's eyebrows yellow, and that just doesn't look right or natural. And it almost looks like he doesn't have eyebrows, which would just look so bad. I really do not like Kenneth Branagh either. For some reason, his films feel so lifeless, and even though I do like Cinderella, and I think the new Murder on the Orient Express is decent, the only performance I liked from him was in Harry Potter. He was horrible in Tenet, and his performance was very bad in Murder on the Orient Express. But you get the point. His directing is just so bland in my opinion, which makes for a really bland and forgettable movie in Thor. Then in 22nd place, I have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Considering how much I love the original Guardians of the Galaxy, I was disappointed with this. I really enjoy a lot of the humor, and the colors look very good. The cast all do great in their roles with characters that are pretty good, but I really do not like the subplot about Rocket. It just felt so unnecessary, and I always wanted it to cut back to Star-Lord and his dad. Speaking of his dad, Kurt Russell did amazing, but the character seemed so dark, and he did a really messed up thing, and that did not blend with the comedic tone at all, and the two tones really clashed. There are great one-liners, and the climax is really amazing. Sometimes when the climax is really amazing in films, it makes me think to myself that I liked the film more than I did. And that did happen the first time I saw this with this film, but even though the climax is really good, this is still on the lower side of MCU films, and very mixed with me. In 21st place, I have Captain Marvel. So I actually think that Captain Marvel is a pretty good film. It's definitely a weaker MCU film because Brie Larson isn't the greatest, and it's never the film I find myself wanting to watch again. I think that a lot of the comedy doesn't really work, but there are some jokes from Samuel L. Jackson that are pretty funny. I really enjoyed seeing Nick Fury in the 90s, and the de-aging effect on Samuel L. Jackson was great. This was the first female-led MCU film, but this is not the film the character Captain Marvel deserved. Kicking off the top 20 is Thor: The Dark World. This movie is a lot better than people make it out to be, in my opinion. Yes, there's a bad villain that is so forgettable that I'm gonna be honest, I don't even remember the name of, but a lot of it is pretty good. Chris Hemsworth was pretty great as Thor, and I think that the comedy works. There are laugh-out-loud moments, and the comedy is very good when it does come. The action sequences, while forgettable, are pretty good, and there was some pretty good emotion. I do not like how Loki keeps dying and then coming back. That happens in this film, but this is still a pretty good movie. But I have the same problem with Captain Marvel with this. I never want to rewatch this film. Just like the first Thor movie, the color palette is dull and almost all gray. I have many problems with it, like many of you, but it is still a pretty good movie, at least in my opinion. Next up in 19th place is The Incredible Hulk. The Incredible Hulk really surprised me. Edward Norton as the Hulk wasn't my favorite, but he still did a really good job. The action is actually pretty amazing, and the final battle between Hulk and Abomination is so cool. It seems so epic, and it's really fun seeing Hulk box with cars. The action scenes are brutal and fun and are the best part of the film. I think it's really awesome that we're getting Abomination back in future MCU projects. The side characters are very forgettable, and I don't remember much from this film other than the action sequences and the main characters. This movie, while very entertaining in some parts, is lacking in others sometimes. It's still a pretty good film, though sadly it is still really low on the list. In 18th place, I have Ant-Man and the Wasp. This film is easily one of the funniest MCU films, and that is probably its biggest strength. Luis is a really hilarious character, and Michael Pena plays him fabulously. The villains are probably its weakest aspect. Both Sonny and Ghost are super forgettable and uninteresting. The Quantum Realm looks beautiful, but is also very confusing and not a plotline I particularly like. The final battle is very fun, but doesn't feel like a final battle and is a little underwhelming, sadly. I love seeing the enlarged Hello Kitty Pez and Salt Shaker in the climax, but the rest of the climax wasn't the greatest. Agent Wu was a great character and made even better in the show WandaVision. I love how after Infinity War, Marvel brought less stakes and just a fun time. It's a really funny MCU film, just not one of the best. Number 17 is Iron Man. This was the introduction to the MCU, and a really good one at that. I can't see anyone else playing Iron Man than Robert Downey Jr. His charisma just makes his character more likable than maybe he seems in the script. Obadiah is a very weak villain, but does have iconic and quotable lines throughout the film. A lot of this film is great, but some of it is just decent, so it is one of the films on the lower side of the list. In 16th place, I have Iron Man 2. So, hot take, I like Iron Man 2 more than the first. People hate on it because it was rushed and needed more time to set up and flesh out the characters, but I think it's fine just as it is. Tony Stark is hilarious in this, and the introduction of Natasha Romanoff was done well. Everything related to Tony's father was emotional and was a nice touch to the film too. The action in the end was very good and exciting, and Don Cheadle as War Machine was great. I think it would be really interesting to see whoever played War Machine in the first Iron Man in the rest of the MCU films. That isn't what ended up happening, but that would be pretty cool. Whiplash is a good villain, even though he's kind of bland. This is a lot of people's least favorite MCU film, but I still think it's pretty good. Number 15 is the new film Black Widow. I'm going to be honest, this was a little disappointing, but it was still really good. Scarlett Johansson was great, and the rest of the cast did really well too. Some of the comedy worked, but a lot of it fell flat, and the only thing funny was this long-running joke that I won't spoil. The action was amazing, just like all Marvel films, but maybe I'm biased because I have been waiting so long to see another MCU film. Seriously, so long. This was also the first MCU film I watched in theaters, so that was awesome. This is one of the darker and more grounded MCU films, which I think matches well with the spy genre. Taskmaster was in it way less than the trailers promised, which was sad because of how cool the character is, which is a small negative in my opinion, but still a negative. What I'm mixed on is that this exists. I'm glad that it exists because I like it, and Black Widow deserves a film, but they already killed off her character. Why would they make a film about her after they kill her off? That just seems so stupid. If this was made when it actually took place in the timeline, then when she did die in Endgame, it would be even sadder. But I don't know, that's just me. With all the negatives I have with this, it is still a really good MCU film. It's on the lower side of the middle of this ranking, as you can see, but that just shows how much I like the MCU. Number 14 is The Avengers. When I first saw The Avengers, I didn't think it was all that good, but thankfully now I think it's great. Seeing all of these characters come together is so cool, and this movie has some amazing action. Loki is a great and iconic villain in this, and this is probably the best first Avengers movie we could have gotten. Seeing characters like Tony Stark and Steve Rogers interact with each other for the first time is so funny, and the final battle at New York is very memorable. I do think that this film runs for a little too long, but I really love a lot of it. I really hate Captain America's suit in this film though. Sadly, the Avengers is low because there are a lot of movies I like more than this in the MCU. Then in 13th place, I have Avengers Age of Ultron. Even from the first viewing, I always thought that Age of Ultron was a bit better than the first Avengers film. It is one of the funniest MCU films and has some of the best banter between these characters in my opinion. Ultron is a compelling villain that is voiced by James Spader very well, and the introduction to Wanda Maximoff and Quicksilver was pretty great. Even though Quicksilver was just introduced in this film, his death was still heroic and sad. Fortunately, Captain America's suit in this was a lot better than it was in the first Avengers film, and looks pretty cool in this. Having this film above the first Avengers and this high might be controversial, but I really love this film. Number 12 is Ant-Man. Ant-Man is pretty underrated, and a
crazy stupid fine
movie. Just like Ant-Man and the Wasp, this is one of the funniest MCU films with a lot of jokes that make me laugh out loud no matter how many times I've heard them. It would be really cool to see what this film would be if Edgar Wright did direct it. That's just a dream though, it'll never happen. This is one of the most rewatchable films in this universe, maybe because of the humor, but also Paul Rudd is very likable as a really good character. Yellow Jacket isn't a very good villain, but I can't wait to see what Marvel does with his character in the upcoming film Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. This is a great origin for a character I knew very little about before watching the film. In 11th place, I have Iron Man 3. This movie was a lot better on rewatch for me. It has the best visual style out of the Iron Man movies, and it easily has the most and best action. At the end, when you have all the Iron Man suits fighting, it's really fun to look at and makes for a great climax. When the Mandarin is attacking Tony's house, it is amazing, and when everyone is flying out of the airplane and Tony has to save them, kind of like Barrel of Monkeys, it just is awesome. The action is some of my favorite in the MCU, and I love the film for that, and much more. I wish there was more Happy Hogan in this, and also Aldrich Killian wasn't a good villain. Trevor was a great villain while he was one, but Aldrich Killian wasn't. The twist never bothered me much, I just wish that Trevor was the real villain. I really loved Harley as a character, and he made for some really good comedic moments and heartfelt moments. The Stan Lee cameo is hilarious, and even though this is a really funny movie, it is also one of the more serious MCU films, kinda like Black Widow. This is the best Iron Man movie, and it's also one of the best non-Christmas Christmas movies, if you know what I mean. Just barely cracking the top 10 is Spider-Man: Far From Home. This movie is an unbelievably overhated film. Yeah, okay, it focuses a little bit too much on comedy, but whatever, it's hilarious. Tom Holland, Zendaya, and Jacob Batalon do just as good as they did in Homecoming, and Jake Gyllenhaal did great as Mysterio. The twist was predictable, but the visuals in the illusion scene are so good, and all of the action is great. Tom Holland is easily my favorite Spider-Man, even though Andrew Garfield is the better actor. Tom Holland just fits the character more. I really wish people wouldn't bash on this film as much as they do, because I personally love it. Then in 9th place, I have Captain America: Civil War. When I first watched this movie, I didn't like it at all, actually, but now I've come to really love it. My favorite thing about it is Spider-Man. All the scenes he's in are amazing. The airport scene is one of my favorite scenes in all superhero movies, heck, all comic book movies, because it is hilarious and also has some great choreography. This movie introduces Spider-Man and Black Panther into the MCU, but it isn't rushed, and both characters are phenomenal. Paul Rudd delivered some of the best jokes in this film as Ant-Man, and so much of this film is amazing. The final battle between Iron Man and Captain America is personal, yet so exciting. I'm not a huge fan of Zemo as a villain, and that is probably my only gripe with this film. It's a pretty big gripe, so that's why it's only in 9th place. Number 8 is Black Panther. Like I just said, the character of Black Panther is great, and his movie is honestly even better. Killmonger is one of the greatest villains in the MCU. He is just so compelling, and his motivation is clear. Michael B. Jordan plays him so well. The look of this film is amazing, however, some of the CGI at the end is a bit questionable. We truly lost a great actor in Chadwick Boseman. He portrays his character so well. This is the only MCU film that has been nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars as of summer 2021, and I think it deserved it. It's gotten major backlash from that, but I love the film. This is the first MCU film that features a mainly black cast, and I give Marvel extra credit for that. Black Panther is a film I can definitely see myself coming back to pretty often. Number 7 is Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok is one of the most stylistic films in the MCU. Taika Waititi's direction is amazing, and the script is hilarious. This is one of the funniest MCU films. I know I keep saying that about others too, but all of the jokes in this are so clever and written so well. This movie has incredible pacing and a very creative story, which made for a film that had me laughing for the whole time. Everyone in the cast is incredibly talented, including Chris Hemsworth as Thor, Tom Hiddleston as Loki, Jeff Goldblum as the Grandmaster, Cate Blanchett as Hela, and many, many more. I'll also add that the poster is just beautiful. Actually, the entire film looks beautiful. I love it. Number 6 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I absolutely despised The Winter Soldier when I first watched it, which was like 2 years ago. I thought it was one of my least favorite films ever, and a super disappointing sequel. As you can tell, I don't think that anymore. I actually love the film. I don't know how my opinion changed so much. After rewatching it, I just thought it was amazing. I love the Winter Soldier storyline, and the action is great. It feels like a spy movie, and that was a great place to take this film in my opinion. Robert Redford plays a great villain, and I think that this is a great addition to the Captain America trilogy. Speaking of Captain America, number 5 is Captain America: The First Avenger. Captain America: The First Avenger was one of the first Marvel films I saw, and it has stayed one of my favorites ever since. I love war movies, and I love seeing Steve Rogers in World War II. My favorite part of the film is before Steve gets the super serum, and when he was training to be a soldier. That part is so interesting, and sets up a great origin for this character. Captain America is one of the most well-known superheroes, and this film serves him justice in every way. Number 4 is Avengers Endgame. Endgame grossed an insane amount of money at the box office, and it deserved every cent in my opinion. Every cast member gives it their absolute all to make as great of a film as they can. The script is absolutely brilliant, giving us humor, but then also giving us many tear-jerking scenes. The CGI is the best in the MCU, the score is epic, the entire film is well-paced and well-written, and the final battle is possibly the greatest final battle I've ever seen. This film is the first film where Cap says the famous line, "Avengers Assemble," and man, it was worth the wait. Seeing the lineup of every single character in the MCU is jaw-dropping and so good. This is everything the fans wanted and more for a finale to the Infinity Saga. Winning the bronze medal is Avengers: Infinity War. I adore this movie. Seeing Spider-Man interact with characters like Doctor Strange and seeing Thor interact with the Guardians of the Galaxy is hilarious. All of that makes for another hilarious MCU film. Somehow they masterfully blend characters from 10 different franchises inside of a franchise, and it works perfectly. It's a roller coaster ride of emotions, thrills, and everything you want from part 1 of the ending to the Infinity Saga. My runner-up is Guardians of the Galaxy. I didn't think I was going to love this film as much as I did going into it. Easily the best thing about it is the tone and comedy, but it also gets emotional. When a superhero film has a talking raccoon and a talking tree, it shouldn't be that good, but it is. I give props to the screenwriter for that. The special effects are phenomenal, the soundtrack is phenomenal, the acting is phenomenal, the Guardians of the Galaxy is phenomenal. But coming in first place is Spider-Man: Homecoming. I've talked about this film so much on this channel, but you are just going to have to sit through me talking about it again. This is the funniest Marvel film ever. Tom Holland gives his best performance as Peter Parker. The Vulture is my favorite comic book villain with an amazing performance from Michael Keaton. The twist is unexpected and makes the villain even better. This is one of the most rewatchable films ever. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero, and this is one of my favorite movies ever. Homecoming isn't even my favorite Spider-Man movie, but I love it so much, and it comes in at number 1.